Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome back. We'll start off just by going around and saying our names to introduce ourselves. So take your time and let people absorb your name, because that's if it goes by too quick, it's really kind of pointless. So I'm David.
Greg.
Todd. With 2 Ds. Darren.
Meredith.
Paul.
Rick.
I'm Jack.
My name is Tom. Edmund.
George. Carl Lasagna.
Douglas. Arb.
Lucas with a C. Ray. David.
Another one.
Buzz. Steve. I'm Bill.
Patrick.
Lee.
Francis.
Jim.
Albert. Tommy. Roger.
Inagoshi.
Peter.
Richard.
Francis. Carrie. Bob.
Larry with an L.
Nicholas. Can't be spelled with a K.
Michael. Scott.
David.
Mark.
Ron.
Philip with 1 L.
Great. Well, Jai also asked me to give him a minute, so I thought,
We're good.
We got more space over here, you guys.
Is there more space?
If you want, you can start handing these. Yeah, you can start handing these out if you like. Just one person.
Is there more space?
Yeah, there are a few places over here. Just grab a zafu.
Try to get a sense of, you can give a 10-second update on what's going on in the space.
Sure.
So people don't know.
Yeah, so as we're settling in, if you are unaware, they had rain damage in here, and not brain damage, rain damage. And so I talked to the gal that runs the place here, and she said that they got some insurance and they're fixing the whole thing up rather than just repairing. So they're getting a new floor and new ceilings, and so it'll be all fine and dandy. She says by the end of February, this is what she says. So welcome back. Jai Kumar is our speaker today, and he is a Sanskrit scholar and teacher and practitioner of Ayurveda medicine and yoga, and has many accomplishments. And Jai.
Thank you. Thank you all. You know, I only made 25 of those. I wasn't quite sure how many people would show up. So if you could just share with your neighbor, that would be great. You can tell I've taught professionally before because I always give handouts in my lectures. So it's getting recorded? Okay. So thank you, everyone. It's great to be back. Thank you for inviting me back. I was sorry to hear about the damage to your beautiful space. I guess as the Buddha would say, shift happens. So anyway, my name is Jai Kumar, and I would just want to introduce myself really quickly. As just got said, I have a really diverse background. I started off as an academic with a Ph.D., actually, in looking at the development of healing and medicine in ancient India, looking at the Buddhist texts, the ancient Vedic texts, the Jain texts, and seeing how medicine and spirituality and healing kind of came about as a science in ancient India. And that kind of led me to my own spiritual journey. I then went on to get trained as a yoga therapist, a spiritual counselor, and an Ayurveda consultant. So I kind of have a lot of hats that I wear, I guess, but they all boil down to one thing about letting people become aware of their beauty and their light. I actually founded a company, my organization, about 3 years ago called Living Your Light. And it's really about promoting creative conscious living within us all, and knowing that we are all really just divine aspects of pure light and love and bliss. And so I was deciding on the subject of the talk I was going to give, about a couple of weeks back. And I remember when I was doing my Ph.D. research back at UCLA, I came across this one Buddhist text, and I can't remember the name of it offhand, but I remember it talked about the 10 sacred names of the Buddha. And I'm curious, how many people here know that the Buddha actually has more than one name? Okay. Well, so for a lot of you, this is going to be new information. That's great. So I thought I'd talk today about the 10 sacred names, or the epithets, of the Buddha, and how we ourselves manifest all of these 10 names within us, and how we can tap into them and experience what I would call the Buddha consciousness that we each have within us. So it's going to be how I'm formatting the talk over here today. Is that me? Okay. Is I've given you the list of the 10 names in Sanskrit. Sanskrit, as you know, is the ancient language of India. And I'm trained as a Sanskrit scholar. That's how I originally came into the work that I do, my profession and my passion. And so I've listed for you the name, the actual sacred name in Sanskrit, then given you a literal translation of what the name means. And then what I like to do is offer my own interpretation of how I look at the aspects and the meanings of what the name actually represents. And of course, this is just my interpretation. Each of you could have your own interpretation as well, but I'm going to offer it within the context of the Buddhist Dharma teachings. Okay? That sound good? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, the first epithet or sacred name of the Buddha is called Tathagata. Now, when you look at a name in Sanskrit, when you come across a word in Sanskrit, I should say, for many of us, Sanskrit is a very esoteric and a very, not a very, common language, or words that we practically maybe use in our daily life. But if you look at the meaning, if you break down the meaning of the words, they actually offer a wealth of philosophy behind it. And so Tathagata means literally the person who has come and is going to from suchness. Now which is Tata. Now suchness is like, what the heck does that mean? The Buddhists talk about the word Tata as being suchness, in that everything which permeates reality is Tata, or suchness. It's the reality beyond the illusion of what we see here. It's the true reality and the existence of all the universe. So all of us, as spirits having a physical experience or a human experience, come from Tata, which is the vast cosmic consciousness of existence. All of us came from there, and all of us eventually are going to return back to that place. We're all here just kind of having a pit stop, kind of learning about the human experience and having all the joys and the experiences that spirits want to have happen here in human body and physical body. So knowing this, knowing that we've all come from cosmic consciousness, and we're all going to return back to cosmic consciousness, this is the first aspect of recognizing the Buddha within, that we are Tathagata. We've all come from suchness, reality, and we all will return there eventually. Okay? So the next thing we talk about is Arhat. Arhat literally translates as worthy of offerings or of praise. Now this may sound like a very egotistic type of thing, wanting to have praise, but it really talks about recognizing that everyone is Buddha. That every one of us is worthy of that honor of being a Buddha. Every person you meet, every animal, the Buddhists say even every plant, contains the Buddha consciousness. And it has to be honored and revered such as that. So every one of us is Arhat. Every one of us has the potential to be honored and to revere everything else which is alive and breathes with consciousness. So the Buddhists talk about Arhat in a way which is very interesting. They talk about the way that we can honor someone and the way we can revere someone is by acknowledging that we are all in our own way trying to overcome suffering. Okay, one of the Four Noble Truths is that life is about suffering. And we are all here to try to overcome that in many ways. The Buddhists talk about the word of suffering. The word is klesha. And the word klesha translates as afflictions. These afflictions can manifest within our being on a mental, and an emotional, a spiritual, or on a physical level. And they're all meant to be overcome and to be recognized as part of our human experience as we attain Buddhahood. Now, how many people here, well, actually everyone here practices meditation, obviously, since we just did a beautiful practice just a little while ago. But how many people here are familiar with the Tibetan Buddhist meditation practice of Tonglen? A couple of people? Okay, great. How many people practice that? Okay. So it's a new, many of you have not heard of this, which is I'd like to just maybe talk about this. The Tibetan Buddhists have this meditation practice called Tonglen. And it's based on the principle that as human beings, we draw to us things that we enjoy and that we like, and we repel and push away things that are disturbing or that are, frightening or, overpowering for us. So many of us want to experience love. We want to draw into our lives love, compassion, joy, abundance, you name it. And we want to dispel or repulse anger, grief, suffering, pain, and all the other afflictions. What the Tibetan Buddhist practice of Tonglen says is that you need to detach and you need to release both of those scenarios. That's the key to releasing all your sufferings. Because in the human experience, or the Buddhist experience, the spiritual experience, everything that you experience in your life, everything that happens to you is sacred. Regardless of whether your ego deems it as being a positive, expansive experience or a challenging, detrimental experience. So the Tonglen practice in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, this is my interpretation, how I practice it at least, it can be different for you, is you intentionally and consciously draw in and attract to you those things in your life which are challenging. Fear, anger, grief, anxiety, depression, whatever the case may be. And you take it in within you into your heart, and you transform it with the power of your grace and the power of your light, and you transform it in a form almost like spiritual alchemy. You transform it into joy and love and compassion, and you spread it out. So you're actually doing the exact opposite of what you're conditioned to be, have thought to have done. Rather than bringing in joy and happiness and abundance, you're giving it away. And you're actually taking in the pain and suffering. And the Buddhists, or the Tibetan Buddhists, say that this is the practice of Tonglen, which allows you to alleviate all the suffering and the afflictions within you. So it's something you can try on your own. I'd love to give a full talk on this at some point, if down the road, if I come back again over here. So Arhat is really about being worthy of offerings and praise, and recognizing that we're all here overcoming suffering in our own way. Okay. The third sacred name of the Buddha is Samyak Sambuddha, which literally translates as one who has attained complete awakening, or one who has attained complete awakening in touch with their right and universal knowledge. Now, we talk about the word Dharma. When I think about this Samyak Buddha aspect of the Buddha, his sacred name, what comes to me very strongly is the Dharmakaya. How many people are familiar with that word, Dharmakaya? Okay. Well, Kaya means body in Sanskrit, and Dharma means, well, it can have many meanings, but Dharmakaya literally means the body of the Dharma. It's the spiritual teachings or the universal principles of the Buddha. The Buddha, in addition to having this, when the Gautama Buddha, I should say, when the Gautama Siddhartha Buddha left his body, his disciples were really, distraught that here is this great teacher who's leaving us. But he said very clearly in the Buddhist scriptures that even though my physical body may not be here, you can always reach me through my Dharma body. Okay? So the Dharmakaya is the actual spiritual, I don't want to say laws, but the principles of Buddhist aspects of his philosophy. And we all have the ability to tap into our own Dharmakaya, our own body of Dharma. Every one of us is holding the seeds of Buddhahood within us. It's just waiting to be nurtured and watered, to blossom and to bloom. And by practicing the Dharmakaya, whatever Dharma is for you. Now, I know the Buddhists have a very specific, interpretation, Dharma, but I want to offer you maybe a broader interpretation in the Sanskrit Indian tradition. Dharma literally comes from the Sanskrit root dri, which means to hold firm. And the Dharma is that which you hold true and to be firm within yourself. So every one of us has his or own Dharma. My Dharma is different from each of your Dharma. But collectively, they're part of the overall Dharmakaya of Buddhism. So tapping into your own Dharma. The Dharma is sometimes, when I give lectures and when I teach my yoga classes or do my spiritual counseling work, I say that each and every one of us has a spiritual soul's objective. Every one of us as spirit and souls chose to come down here with a very specific Dharma to activate and to manifest in our lives. And so staying true to that is following your Dharma body and the Dharmakaya in the way in which you obtain this aspect of Samyak Sambuddha, or awakening to your full Buddha consciousness. Okay? I love to say, there's a great phrase I love to use, that our soul's purpose is our soul purpose. S-O-U-L, soul's purpose is right. S-O-L-E, soul purpose. So that's how I define Dharma. Like your soul purpose is your soul's purpose. And that's it. So that's the third aspect, the third sacred name. The fourth is a bit of a tongue twister. Vidya Charana Sampanna. Okay? Try saying that 10 times really quickly, on your see how that rolls out. So Vidya Charana Sampanna literally means perfect in knowledge and good moral conduct. Okay. So what does this aspect of the Buddha mean, or how do we interpret this? So one way that I interpret this is recognizing that in order for us to experience the full manifestations of our own Buddhahood, we have to follow the guidelines of proper moral conduct and proper perfection in knowing that by following these basic guidelines, we are actually living and breathing the practice of the Buddha. So how does this come about? I think one way in which you can see this is in the Eightfold Path. How many people here are familiar with the Eightfold Path? Okay. So I'll just recap what these are really quickly. The Eightfold Path. Those who might not be familiar with it right now. So the Buddha talked about the Eightfold Path as a way to achieve the practices of the Dharmakaya. Okay, and so I like to break the 8 paths into 3 categories. The first is what I would call the aspects of wisdom that the Eightfold Path has to offer, and those are right view and right intention. We then have the ethical conduct of the Eightfold Path, the right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Okay, and we also have on an aspect of it mental development, which would be right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So when you tap into each of those 8 aspects of the Eightfold Path of the Buddha, you actually begin to follow your own spiritual guidelines, and you follow your own spirit. So these are like, I look at the Eightfold Path of the Buddha as being like a spiritual compass, pointing you into the direction. The compass always points due north. Okay. The Eightfold Path of the Buddha is the compass that aligns you magnetically to the Dharmakaya. It aligns you to the spirit and the true essence of the Buddha within. So the 5th one, I know we're running through these somewhat quickly, but I could talk just an hour on each of these, but I just want to just give you a quick overview of what these are. The 5th, Sugata. Now, Sugata breaks down into the word su and gata. Su is a word which means happy or blissful, and gata means gone. So Sugata literally translates the one who has gone into a place of happiness, into a place of bliss. Again, each of us hold the keys to unlock our own suffering. Each of us has the potential to release the bondage of suffering that we experience in our lives. And once we transform that, we fully are released and are gone into this space of pure bliss and joy. In addition to the Dharmakaya, the Buddha talks about there being Sambhogya Kaya, or Sambhogakaya, Sambhogakaya. How many people are familiar with that word or heard of that? Okay, that's not a very common word many people are aware of, but it's called the body, the body of Buddha, which resonates with divine bliss. Okay. Our souls and our spirit just resonate with the light of abundance and joy, compassion, bliss, and ecstasy. That's our true nature. That's our true Buddha nature, if you will. But each of us, somehow, when we come down into the physical body, we have this amnesia. We forget who we really are. We forget we're this beautiful being of pure light, compassion, and love, and bliss and joy. And we somehow, through the course of our existence in the physical body, get programmed into thinking that we're something else. We get programmed into thinking that, you can think about, you can maybe ask yourself this: what programmings have you imprinted onto your being that prevent you from manifesting your Sambhogakaya, your true divine right, if you will, to experience your body of divine bliss and divine joy. And once you release all those aspects and those programmings within you, you then tap into your Sugata, and you then go into this place of pure bliss. And it just radiates and resonates in every cell, in every fiber of your being, and you just live it. Okay? So that's the 5th aspect of the sacred name of the Buddha. The next is what I would call Lokavid. Lokavid literally means understanding and knowing the world. So I talked really briefly just a little while ago about how we all come down into the physical world having this amnesia. we forget who we truly are. And we buy into the Maya, or the illusion, that what we see in and around us is our reality. But it's all just a holographic projection of what it is that we're trying to, experience. I love to give this metaphor, and I think maybe you might be able to relate to this. If you think about those old-fashioned movie projectors, that have the reels, and the film goes down in it. I know we live in the age of DVD, so it's kind of like an antiquated concept right now. But I think what I'm talking about, those old movie projectors that you had like in the 70s and 80s, or in school, that would project this light onto the film, and you would see it on the screen, right? That's how it used to work, right? So the light in the movie screen is the light of your soul. It's undifferentiated. It's pure light. It's pure consciousness, and it's pure bliss. It doesn't have any images on it. It's just unrefined. It's pure and just blissful and existent in its own state of just being pure divine light. But the minute you put a film screen onto the light, what does the light do? It projects whatever image onto the movie screen. Every one of us is running our own film and our own movie, right? We're all projecting our own movie onto the universe. Everyone in this room is running their own film. So you have the choice of what movie you want to watch. You could watch a horror film, which is really gross and disturbing, and or like a really bad movie, distasteful movie, or you could watch a movie which is very spiritually moving, emotionally heartening for you, and very grounding and peaceful for you. So this is the nature of Lokavid, is knowing the understanding and knowing the reality of how the world really exists, and you having the potential to shift that. I use that phrase, shift happens. It's a really great phrase to use because every one of us has the potential to shift our consciousness. And it's all a matter about shifting and choosing what film we're playing on our movie screen. Okay? So that's Lokavid in a nice example of that. The next is what I would call Anuttara. Anuttara means unexcelled. It literally translates as unexcelled in every way. Now that might seem like a really tall order to fill. Unexcelled in every way. My God, I have to be perfect every moment of my day. No, that's not what the chart's trying to say. We don't have to be perfect. But we need to just know that everything that we do in our life needs to be met with our own personal standards of moral conduct and our own ethical standards of living. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just knowing that we have the potential to do that. The way in which I, again, talk about this, it's not really about, coming from this place of ego, about being perfect or having things to be just right and having the ego take over. It's really about acting in a manner that, again, just sees you aligning to your spirit, from a place of truth and authenticity. And when you do that, you live just perfectly in every single way. You don't have to worry about if things are just perfect. You know that they are. You embody that perfection just by aligning to your divine light. The ancient Indian Buddhist thought talks about the different aspects of the Buddha. Okay, there are different physical representations of the Buddha that you see in many Buddhist traditions and teachings. There's the Shakyamuni Buddha, which is the Buddha of mindfulness. Okay. There's the Manjusri Bodhisattva, the Buddha of understanding. We have the Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, which is the Buddha of compassion. And we also have the Maitreya Buddha, which is the Buddha of love. So when you can embody and align to each of those four aspects of the Buddha, those four manifestations of the Buddha, you are living in the most perfect, genuine way, from a place of understanding, compassion, love, and mindfulness. Okay? So the 8th is what I call Purusha Dhamya Sarati. That's another tongue twister as well. It literally translates as leader of the people. Okay? So, leader of the people, again, my God, should I have to become like a leader to my community? No. What it tells us is that every one of us has something we can teach to everyone else. We are all leaders in our communities. By just practicing the tenets and the Dharmakaya, we are, in fact, being leaders of the Buddha consciousness and are manifesting it out into the community in every single way. Now, when you manifest, again, these deepest aspects of love, understanding, compassion, and mindfulness, you embody what the Buddhist tradition calls bodhicitta. Bodhicitta translates as the mind of enlightenment. So again, when you align to your spirit, when you align to your truth, you are aligning to the different aspects of the Buddha, the mindfulness, the compassion, the understanding, and the love. And you embody the bodhicitta, or this mind of enlightenment, to help you to achieve self-actualization and self-realization of your own Buddhahood within. And it's from that place you then are able to work for the welfare for all humanity and for all beings on the planet. So in that way you become the leader in your community or on the planet. And you embody the aspect of Purusha Dhamya Sarati. So the 9th one is Shasta Deva Manushanam. It's somewhat similar to why it translates literally as the teacher of gods and humans. It ties in very similar to the last aspect, the sacred name of the Buddha, the leader of people. But when you look at this aspect of the Buddha, the sacred name of the Buddha, the Shasta Deva Manushanam, it's really about, again, being connected to spirit and being connected into the power of presence. Just being in the sacredness of the here and the now is a way in which you embody your full manifestation of your divine spirit, the divine aspects of the Buddha, and you then are able to go and become that teacher to everyone else, just by living from a place of authenticity. Every aspect of your being just radiates with your light when you align to your truth and to your light, and staying grounded in the sacredness of the present moment, which is why meditation is such a very key practice in Buddhist philosophy and teachings, because it allows us and encourages us to use the power of the breath to bring your consciousness into present time. And if you're able to connect with your breath at every single moment in your life, you are authentically living in this place of mindfulness and presence, and are then able to become that teacher just by your very life. Okay? So the 10th one is find the name that we all are familiar with, the Buddha Bhagavat. When you actually embody all these 10 different sacred names of the Buddha, you live and you fully embrace all aspects of what the Buddha is trying to impart to us in his wisdom and his teachings. Again, the Buddhist traditions say, the ancient scriptures of the Buddhist traditions say, that every one of us embodies and has the seed for all these 10 attributes and characteristics of the Buddha within us. The Sanskrit word for this is called Tathagata Garbha. So the word Garbha means womb, W-O-M-B, womb. And we all carry the seeds of the Buddha baby within, of the Buddha child within. Every one of us, in our just physical body, in our experience within our lives, carries the presence and the seed for which our Buddha consciousness, again, can then be flourished, cultivated, and nurtured. So everyone in this room carries the pregnant possibilities of consciousness. Every one of us embodies an aspect of Tathagata Garbha. We are all the wombs and carrying the sacred seed of consciousness of the Buddha and within us at all times. Now, I know that a lot of this, a lot of these teachings, they come, they're over 2,000, almost 2,500 years old. Many of these teachings that I'm talking about today. So a lot of these teachings, I feel as universal as they are, they really, as anything in any spiritual tradition or religious practice, they're really just an outline or a guideline for you to embody what you feel is your truth. Some of these aspects of what I'm talking about today may resonate with you very strongly, and some may not. Okay, it's really your choice. The universe, as we know, resonates on free will and choice. Nothing is forced upon us. So by acknowledging that there are benefits and there are insights that each of us can gain from each of these sacred 10 names is sufficient enough. But what I would like to offer you is, as a way before we close and maybe move on into some Q&A discussion about the talk today, is to give you some of my own simpler rules for what I would call living your light. These are some aspects I put together, some kind of fun things I put together for my clients and just in my teaching practice that I do in my spiritual counseling and in my yoga practice, about just simple rules for living your life. And I think they tie in very closely to the teachings of the original teachings of the Buddha. So here you go. Number 1, love everyone unconditionally, including yourself. Number 2, never criticize anyone, including yourself. Number 3, bless every situation in your life, regardless of whether you see it as being good or bad. 4, open your heart daily and make a conscious choice to keep your heart open no matter what may come. 5, maintain a daily dialogue with your inner presence. Maintain a daily dialogue with your inner source of light, your divinity within. Ask for whatever you need in accordance with your highest good. Number 6, do only that which makes you joyous and alive. Number 7, every action you do, ensure that it does no harm to yourself, to others, and to the planet. Next one, laugh and do something you love at least once a day. For me, it's watching The Simpsons. Accept that change is inevitable. Everything is transient. So enjoy the sacredness of every moment. Remember to stay fully connected with your breath at all times, for it is the key to your connection to spirit and to the universe. And lastly, believe in yourself, keep the faith, and never give up, because each of you are all true Buddhas. Namaste.
Thank you. Yeah, we have 10-12 minutes for questions. So
I'm sure we'll hear an example of the Tibetan Buddhist meditation you're talking about, where you take it. Yeah.
Tonglen.
Thanks.
Okay, like give an example of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's what you can do it any time in your day. Let's say you're in a car and you're driving, and some jerk, pulls, tries to cut you off or something, their first reaction is like, I'm going to get that jerk, how dare you do that to me? It brings up, what does it bring up in you? Anger, frustration, and anxiety. Okay? So rather than ignoring it, okay, rather than, trying to push it back, what you're doing, you're pushing the anger and frustration out to the universe when you do that. So rather, the practice of Tonglen actually states, take in that anger and frustration, connect with your breath and to your light, divine spirit, and transform it into compassion, and then give it out. Okay. That's just a quick example.
Yeah, I have an odd question, if you don't mind.
Nothing's odd. There's no such thing as odd questions.
We'll be trying. A couple weeks ago, I talked about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali.
Great.
And so a lot of this is quite familiar.
Yeah.
Resonates nicely with my beginning understanding of it. I wonder if you could put into a little better context the sutras, including the Karma Sutra. Could you comment?
The Karma or Kama Sutra?
Yeah, the Kama Sutra.
K-A-M-A? Or K-A-R-M-A?
K-A-M-A.
I'm referring to loosely to the section.
Oh, okay, sure.
This is a gay organization.
Oh yeah, absolutely, no worries. No, I wasn't because they're actually
the Buddhist sutras and the Karma Sutra.
and the Yoga Sutras.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't understand.
No worries. The word sutra, just so you know what the word sutra means, the word sutra actually means thread. It's actually cognate and related to the English word suture. Okay. It comes from the ancient Proto-Indo-European verb su, to sew. Okay. So a sutra is really like a common thread that weaves together a common philosophy. So there are many sutras. There are the Yoga Sutras, the Dharma Sutras, the Kama Sutra, the Tantra Sutras. And the sutras are just a catchphrase to say they're just a body of work. Okay, so the great question, how does a Yoga Sutras? For those of you who aren't familiar with the Yoga Sutras, as a Sanskrit scholar and a yoga therapist and instructor, I talk with the Yoga Sutras a lot. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali were created or edited and compiled around 500 BCE, the same time of the Buddha, when he did his teachings. And it's academic scholars of Buddhist and Indian spirituality, like myself, can see very clearly that there was a very common flow of philosophies and I think dialogue between the two systems. The Yoga Sutras talk, just to give a real brief introduction to the Yoga Sutras, they talk about the eight branches of yoga, the Ashtanga yoga tradition, the 8 branches of yoga, and they're in a way very similar to they don't exactly mesh with the Eightfold Path of the Buddha, but they have a lot of correlations with them. They're really, again, not a moral, but sort of like an ethical guideline or outline of living your practice in alignment to truth. So the Yoga Sutras and the Buddhist philosophy teachings heavily influenced mutually one another. It's very transparent for those people who are versed in both those teachings, as I'm sure you are as well. So they are very heavily influenced on one another. That answers that question. The Kama Sutra was written much, much later, about 800 to 1000 AD. Okay, the word Kama means desires and love, and it came out of the Tantric tradition of yoga philosophy. The Tantric tradition of yoga philosophy originated around what Indian scholars say is the medieval in medieval India, post Upanishads and post Brahmanas and post Vedic tradition. So around 500 to 1000 AD is when I believe the Kama Sutra are actually written down and codified, because the language tells you that. That's the key to know how to date something, a text. It does. The Tantra tradition, actually, some people say the actual Tantra tradition goes way back. But yeah, on some level, it's very shamanistic and does predate the yoga tradition. But the actual codified aspect of Tantra yoga as a system of codification came about around 500 AD.
Could we get a couple more questions?
Yeah,
and then
sure.
maybe you could, the academics could all get together and
Okay.
circle after.
I need a question over here. Yeah. Thank you. About the Tonglen?
Yeah. When you're working with very depressed people, often it's really hard to get them to bring in more suffering,
I
especially
know.
if they've gotten to a place where they're feeling better. So I'm just wondering how you work with your clients.
Like that? Yeah. A lot of work that I do, Steve, who's one of my yoga students, can verify this. In the yoga practice, in my yoga practice that I teach my students, as well as my spiritual counseling, I work very strongly with the emotional body, because my philosophy in therapeutic yoga is that underlying a physical condition or a medical or an injury in the body, there's an emotional or a spiritual or energetic component that anchors that into place. And so in the case of depression, I mean, there's actually a whole discourse I can go on this, but I'm going to just give you a quick answer. For people who are already, suffering from depression, as you said, bringing more of that in is not going to work. But they already have so much within them that the key that I really say is wonderful in terms of work that I've done with people and clients working with depression and anxiety and grief is to use the breath. Because the breath is really the transformative aspect of the practice. The moment you connect your breath into your body, you align to spirit and to the universe. And you're able to surrender those aspects of depression and grief and sadness and transform it and transmute it into other aspects of consciousness.
So do you feel like that kind of gives them a cord?
It does. Exactly, yeah. I would not recommend just to people who already, I think, have a lot of depression and grief and sadness. I think Tonglen practice is probably not the best thing for them. But because it's a very intense practice, which I do myself and for my clients, and I actually do it in my yoga practice for my students as well as they're in the poses. So it's a very it takes a lot to master it, and it's something I would not recommend anyone doing lightly, or especially for someone who's just in a very agitated or fragile emotional state. And actually, by the way, I'm doing a great workshop on yoga and the emotional body in March. And if you want information on that, I'll give it to you.
Could I? As my understanding, Tonglen practice is not for people who are overwhelmed by anxiety.
Yeah.
But they're for people who are kind of drifting into meditative bliss states and are losing touch with the world. And it's much more helpful there.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
If you're taking too much in, that's what causes depression.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is maybe a little bit existential, but I've heard it described in a lot of different ways and different books about Maya, and also like the absolute versus the relative, okay? And it's described over and over again. But it's only rarely that I've stumbled upon like the reason that exists. There has to be, if there is the absolute, and it's all contained, then what is the purpose of the relative for me as a spirit to come in here if I have all of it within me already?
Okay. Here's the thing I like to, maybe this is a great way to end, because I know we're running out of time. I'll give you this story. Maybe this is a nice way to explain Maya. I love to use analogy and story in the way that I teach. So, how many of you here, like when you were younger, played hide and seek or treasure hunt games? Okay. So your soul does the exact same thing. When your soul chooses to come down into the physical body, it plays this game of hide and seek or treasure hunt. It knows that it has all these beautiful treasures. And it knows that it has all these beautiful, divine aspects of consciousness that it wants to experience. But it wants to do it in the physical world, and it wants to discover them. So the spirit and the soul choose to come down into physical body voluntarily to discover where these treasures are. But there's a catch. We have amnesia. We forget who we really are because it's part of the game. It's part of the reason that we all come down here. It's really about us. It's really about discovering these beautiful gifts that we have within us. And we kind of hide these gifts in various incarnations, in various aspects, in various situations in our lives. And it's up to us as spirit to come down in physical body with the amnesia to figure out where they are. But in the process, we get conditioned to believe, because we have the amnesia, that what we see here is real. Okay? And that is, as we talk about in Indian spiritual traditions and in many of the other traditions of the world, that's the cause of a lot of the suffering that we're experiencing here, is because it's all due to the amnesia, which represents itself as the Maya or the illusion. So the Maya has a purpose. Knowing that we've chosen to come down here with the amnesia intentionally and consciously to discover these treasures is a way in which we understand that this really is all just illusion, it's all Maya, and we are able to manifest and embody pure consciousness while staying in physical form. So that's the key. The reason why we have Maya is because the goal for every spirit or for every soul is to achieve moksha or liberation or cosmic consciousness while still in the physical body in human existence. So in order for that to happen, if we didn't have amnesia, we'd all be enlightened beings walking around the planet. And there'd be no purpose to come down here. What's the point? I'm enlightened already. Why do I want to come down here? Okay? But it's all part of the game. It's all part of, the aspect of playing this divine game of hide and seek, or playing a treasure hunt game.
Okay. You'll be around maybe a little afterward if people want to ask you more questions and talk.
Yeah.
Great. So we'll be closing in a minute and setting all of our stuff back in the corner and having some tea and visiting. Before that, we have a time for GBF-related announcements or events that are maybe of interest to GBFers or something like that. So, anybody have an announcement? Paul.
Just wanted to announce that we have to have a steering committee meeting today, and we're going to try to start at 12:30. So it might mean stopping the social a little bit earlier than we regularly do because we don't have 2 hours. Or if people want to stay, just keep in mind that we have to do a meeting.
Well, we can work it out, I think.
Yeah,
I don't want to
just be mindful that that's going to happen. We need some space. Who's the host?
Okay, and our host is Francis, and there he is. Francis, please.
There are cookies and tea. Don't forget the Donna bowl. Please be as generous as you can. Please wash your cups. And be careful to eat all the cookies or take them away with you in case you critically eat them. Nobody wants that to happen. Is there anyone here for the first time? Would you like to do a dedication? Over here. Sure. You have questions? David can answer.
Lee?
This has been mentioned before, but I just want to remind people that the annual Gay and Lesbian Retreat at Spirit Rock, which I've gone on a couple of times, is occurring Tuesday through Sunday, April 18th through whatever Sunday is. And it's been delightful in the past. There's usually about 90 people there, sort of roughly half and half gay men and lesbians. And in fact, I even have a more or less straight friend who plans to come because he finds gay men more agreeable.
I just want to follow up on what Francis mentioned about the Donna Bowl. we've been blessed in the past few months to have really good attendance, which is very heartening to see. Some of the old timers can remember when there was a lot less than this. However, sadly, we're financially strapped in a way that we haven't been for a long time. And there seems to be a disconnect between attendance and contribution. And I just want to say, as we all know, nothing comes for free. If you enjoy this community and what it represents and so on, it really needs financial support. There are finances involved in running this operation and the programs we do outside. So I really encourage you to not only take the blessings of this group, but to give something too, and as generously as you can. And think about that with Dharma Call. We are in a somewhat stressed situation financially. We really need you all to be generous in your contributions.
Yes.
Yeah, a reminder that our talks are available on the internet at the GBF website, gaybuddhist.org.
Great. And Lee.
And just to follow up Cliff's announcement,
Clint.
in the same way, it reminds me of the 12-step perspective of we have no dues or fees, but we do have expenses. And currently we have enough money to continue in existence for another 2 or 3 months. So I hope that people will respond to that. And I just did a back of the envelope calculation, and our expenses actually run an average of about $10 per person. So you might bear that in mind.
Per meeting?
Yep.
Well,
more expensive than movies, but not that.
And if that's all, anyone else? Last call?
Is it worth mentioning in connection with some of the things that the group does, which take money, which are not visible here? For example, the cooking, the provision of food and cooking for the homeless families over in Hague, which we do once a month.
Right.
And that takes a good bit of money, and I think that the more each of us knows about that operation, it's very valuable. I mean, when you say family, we're talking about kids. These are just little kids, and they've been thrown out of their houses. So they live in this shelter over there, which is like a military barracks. And it does take money, even to help them a little bit.
And that's a big expense, yeah, of the group,
Yeah,
$2,400.
Well, 200 a month. That's our one GBF project of engaged Buddhism that I'm aware of.
Or prison project.
Oh, I'm sorry?
Well, the prison project.
Oh, I apologize. That's too. It's a wonderful. We've been doing it for 8 years. It really depended upon us. We do it once a month. This program is in jeopardy right now because we may not have the finances to continue. And you know, if that happens, everything is a life. But I would really feel sad if that did happen at this stage. So I don't think it's necessary.
And I'd just like to say that this becomes clearer to you, you know, rather than the few people who are kind of responsible for it kind of anxiously pointing it out. If you become involved in a more organic way in the running of the organization. So if you want to participate, you know, this spot here looks like a leadership position because I get to ring the bell. But it's really easy to do. You just, you know, everyone knows how to have guests over at their house, and these are very friendly guests, you know, and then you just ring the bell and start the thing and read up on the guy and introduce him, and you know, beautiful, wonderful talk. But if you feel like you want to give a talk someday, you're an expert in your life, you know. So, and please, that way then it becomes clear and organic. Okay, thank you. So, okay, Lee.
And to follow that up, I would just mention that Paul, who is our general coordinator to kind of keep things together, needs to be resigned. In fact, I think he's wanted to do that sooner. And so far, we have not had a volunteer, hopefully somebody with some slight organizing ability or remembering things ability, to take that over. So we we need one or more candidates for that quite strongly.
Okay, so we're running a little late. I think we'll close down. And do we have any last announcements? I don't want to cut it off. All right. Oh, we'll stand in a circle, and Jai will give us a dedication of merit. Closing, whatever you wish to call it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are you going to read it?
I was going to read a quote. It's kind of a fun quote I'd like to end with.
Form a T-bond.
So if we can just close our eyes and just connect the breath into the body, tapping into your divine truth, your divine light, inhaling your breath of truth, your breath of light, your breath of joy. And so I'd like to end with a quote from a very fun movie from the 80s called Joe versus the Volcano. And the quote is, "Almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everyone you see, everyone you talk to. Only a few of us have the courage to be awake, and we live in constant and total amazement." So just acknowledging that all of us have the power to wake up from the amnesia, from the illusion. And may you continue to live your light from a place of total amazement, beauty, fearlessness, and joy. Thank you. Namaste. I do have my, if you want to learn more about the work that I do, I have my flyers, my mailing list, and my yoga class schedule as well. So I'd love to talk to you. I'll have them over here.
But I think that
Thank you. I enjoyed your words very much.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.